gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages, welcome to Robert Sports Show. I'm your host, Robert. NCAA week number 8. We've had 7 interesting, fun-filled, dramatic weeks of college football. In week 7, I was 16-10 on win-loss, 9-7 against the spread, and 13-13 over/under, which brings the year-to-date totals to win-loss 124-42. Against the spread 76-97 and over/under 88-85. We have 8 teams that are with undefeated. We have 22 teams with 1 loss. Of those 8 undefeated teams we have out of the American Conference, we have the USC Knights, the Cincinnati Bearcats, and the South Florida Bulls, all 6-0. Out of the ACC, we have the Clemson Tigers and the NC State Wolfpack, which play each other this week, are both 6-0. The Big Ten, we have the undefeated Ohio State Buckeyes 7-0. On the independent side, we have the Notre Dame Fighting Irish 7-0. And then out of the SEC, we have the Alabama Crimson Tide 7-0. Alright, we have 34 games we're doing this week, so let's get started. First game, the Cincinnati Bearcats undefeated at 6-0 versus the Temple Owls at 4-2. Temple is favored by 3.5 at home. I like the Bearcats on the road. I like the fact their defense is only giving up 13.6 points a game. I'm giving the 30.5 to the Bearcats. I have them winning, covering, and over on the 47.5. Next, we have the Connecticut Huskies at 1-5 versus the 6-0 South Florida Bulls. The Huskies are giving up 53 points a game average on defense. South Florida is favored by 32.5. Big fucking number. That's a big fucking number. I am taking the Bulls to win. I am taking UConn to cover. And I will take under on the 69. Next, we have the UCF Knights 6-0 versus the East Carolina Pirates 4-2. UCF is favored by 21. It's a big number on the road, but I have the Knights win, the Knights cover, and an over on the 65. Next, we have the Battle of the Tigers. We have the Memphis Tigers versus the Missouri Tigers. Missouri is 3-3, while Memphis is 4-3. Missouri is favored by 9.5 at home. It is homecoming for the Missouri Tigers. I'm taking Tigers to win, Missouri Tigers. I have the Tigers to cover, Memphis Tigers, and then under on the 74. Can Drew Lock actually carry the team? I mean, we see what happened at Alabama last week. Drew Lock is projected to be in a first-round draft pick, but he can't win a big game. So we'll see if he can at least win this game. Next, we have the Houston Cougars at 5-1 versus the Navy Midshipmen at 2-4. Houston favored by 13. I got them winning, covering, and over on the 16.5. Now that game out of the SEC, probably game of the week. NC State Wolfpack 6-0. Versus the Clemson Tigers, 6-0. If somehow NC State is able to upset Clemson, what would that do to not only the ACC, but the championship committee? And that would just blow a lot of things up. I don't have that happening. I do have the Clemson Tigers winning. Clemson is favored by 16.5. That's a huge number. I got Clemson winning, NC State covering the 16.5, and then over on the 55.5. Next, we have the Wake Forest Stephen Deacons at 3-3 versus the 3-3 Florida State Seminoles. Florida favored by 10.5. I do have them winning, covering, and under on the 60.5. The Illinois Fighting Illini at 3-3 versus the 4-2 Wisconsin Badgers. Wisconsin is favored by 25 at home. I am taking the Badgers to win. I have an Illinois cover the 25, and then I'm taking over on the 54.5. Next, we have the Battle of Michigan with the Michigan Wolverines at 6-1 versus the 4-2 Michigan State Spartans. The Wolverines have been playing phenomenal this year. Their only loss is to Notre Dame. It's a great loss, if there's such a thing as a great loss. But anyway, Michigan favored by a touchdown. I have them winning, covering, and over in the 44.5. And another one out of the Big Ten here. We have the Penn State Nittany Lions at 4-2 versus the Indiana Hoosiers 4-3. Penn State favored by 2 touchdowns. I have the Hoosiers covering the 14 and Nittany Lions winning and over on the 61. Next, we have the undefeated Ohio State Buckeyes at 7-0 versus the Purdue Boilermakers at 3-3. Buckeyes favored by 14. I got them winning and covering the 14 and over on 65.5. Next, we have the Maryland Terrapins at 4-2 versus the Iowa Hawkeyes at 5-1. Iowa's actually favored by 11.5 at home. I have the Hawkeyes winning, covering the 11, and Maryland covering the 11.5 and under on the 52. Next, we have the Oklahoma Sooners, the Boomer Sooner, 5-1 versus the TCU Horned Frogs at 3-3. Sooners favored by 7.5 and then winning, covering and under on the 61. Next, we have the FAU Owls, 3-3 versus the Marshall Thundering Herd at 4-2. I have the Owls winning, covering the 3 points, and then over on the 58.5. Next, we have the North Texas Mean Green at 6-1 versus the UAB Blazers at 5-1. This is the top 2 teams in the Conference USA West Division. The Mean Green are favored by 1. And then winning, covering, and over on the 53. Next, we have the UTEP Miners at 0-6 versus the Louisiana Tech Bulldogs at 4-2. Louisiana Tech is favored by 23.5 and then winning, covering, and over on the 48. Next, the Miami of Ohio Red Hawks 3-4 versus the Army West Point Black Knights at 4-2. Army favored by 7.5 and then winning, covering, and over on the 47. Next, we have the Buffalo Bulls at 6-1 versus the Toledo Rockets at 3-3. Toledo is actually favored by 1.5. I'm giving the 1.5 to Buffalo. I got the Bulls winning, covering the 1.5 and under on the 67. Next, the Bowling Green Falcons at 1-6 versus the Ohio Bobcats at 3-2. Bobcats favored by 16.5 and then winning, covering, under on the 69.5. Next, we have the Colorado Rams at 3-4. Colorado State Rams, at 3-4 versus the Boise State Broncos at 4-2. Boise State is favored by 23.5. I have the Broncos winning. I have the Rams covering to 23.5, and I am taking over on the 59. Next, we have the 5-1 Utah State Aggies versus the 2-5 Wyoming Cowboys. Utah State favored by 15.5. I have them winning, covering, and over on the 52.5. Next, we have the San Diego State Spartans at 0-6 versus the 5-1 San Diego State Aztecs, 5-1. San Diego State is favored by 27.5. Again, it's a huge number. Both teams are scoring low 20s in points. Offensively, 22 and 21. Spartans 22. Defensively, though, the Aztecs are giving up 19, while the Spartans are giving up 41. So I got the Aztecs winning. I got the Spartans covering the 27.5, and I'm taking under on the 48. Next, the Fresno State Bulldogs 5-1 versus the New Mexico Lobos 3-3. Fresno State favored by 2 touchdowns. I got them winning, covering, and under on the 55.5. Next, we have the 5-1 Colorado Buffaloes versus the 5-2 Washington Huskies. Now, the next couple of games here, we have Colorado 5-1 versus the 5-2 Washington. Oregon 5-1 versus the 5-1 Washington State Cougars. We have 3 Pac-12 teams here that are with 1 loss. If Buffaloes beat the Huskies will be 3 losses, they'll be done. If the Huskies win, now you start to get that long jam at the top of the Pac-12 with 2 losses. Unfortunately, I don't believe that a two-loss Pac-12 champion will make the Final Four. The committee's already basically by their actions over the last few years have said no. So this is kind of a must-win for one of these teams, Colorado, Oregon, or Washington State, to keep with one loss only. I do have Colorado Buffaloes. The Huskies are favored by 15.5 at home. I am picking the Colorado Buffaloes to win that versus the Huskies. I'm giving Colorado the 15.5, but I have the Huskies covering that, and I'm taking under on the 51.5. In the other game, the Oregon Ducks, Washington State Cougars, both teams 5-1. Washington State is favored by 1.5 at home. I got the Ducks going in. I'm giving the Ducks the 1.5. I got them winning, covering, and under on the 66.5. Next, we have the 4-2 Stanford Cardinal versus the 3-3 Arizona State Sun Devils. Stanford favored by 2.5. I got them winning, covering, and under on the 54.5. Now we have the USC Trojans at 4-2 versus the Utah Utes at 4-2. Utah is favored by 6.5. I'm picking them to win, covering, under on the 49. So if Buffalo ends up with 2 losses, and either Washington State or Oregon ends up with 2 losses, you've got a 2-loss Stanford team. You've got a 2-loss team between the Utah and USC. So there's a lot of 2-loss going on there in the Pac-12. Next, we have the Auburn Tigers at 4-3 versus the Ole Miss Rebels at 5-2. Auburn is favored by 4 on the road. I'm giving the 4 to Ole Miss. I got Ole Miss winning. I got them covering the 4. I'm taking over on the 62.5. Next, we have the Alabama Crimson Tide 7-0. Is this not the best team that Nick Saban has ever had? Versus the 3-3 Tennessee Volunteers. I mean, look at this. Normally a Nick Saban team, defense. This year, offensive scored 53 points a game. I mean, these numbers at Auburn, they were 29.5 last week versus Kansas City and Missouri. This week, they're 28.5 favored by Tennessee. And then winning, and then covering, taking over on the 57. Hell, Alabama could score 57 by themselves. Next, we had the Mississippi State Bulldogs 4-2 versus the surprise 6-1 LSU Tigers. I picked Georgia over LSU last week. I was wrong. LSU 6.5 favorites on home, winning, covering, and over on the 44.5. Next, we have the Vanderbilt Commodores at 3-4 versus the 5-1 Kentucky Wildcats. Woo! Kentucky's favored by 11. I got them winning, covering, and over on the 48. Next, we have the Georgia State Panthers 2-4 versus the Arkansas State Red Wolves 3-4. The Red Wolves are favored by 2 touchdowns at home. I got them winning, covering, under on the 56.5. Next, we have the Louisiana Raging Cajuns at 3-3 versus the Appalachian State Mountaineers at 4-1. Mountaineers are favored by 24.5. I had them winning, covering, and under on the 66. And last but not least, we have the Georgia Southern Eagles at 5-1 versus the New Mexico State Aggies at 2-5. Georgia Southern favored by 13. I had them winning, covering, and under on that 55.5. All right. That will wrap up week number 8 of the NCAA college football season here on Robert Sports Show. Stay tuned to Robert Sports Show for the NFL Week 7. If you're a NASCAR fan, make sure you check out the Xfinity and the Cup Series race at Kansas preview here on Robert Sports Show. And if you're a pro wrestling fan, make sure you check out the review of Glory by Honor, Ring of Honor, Glory by Honor, and then Impact Wrestling, Bound for Glory. Both those reviews are up on Robert Sports Show. As always, thanks for watching Robert Sports Show, and don't just have a great day. Have a spiffy day. Robert Sports Show, your YouTube leader in sports channel content.